have to find them. Okay, so first of all, I've heard, Dr. Roberts, that you have an addition to your family, which is why your backdrop looks different.
I do. Yeah. My background is different from usual because I'm in the room above my garage, which is actually where we started out, in the room above my garage. But I moved here because we have 2 nests of baby birds which have taken root around my front door. And when the parents are a bit slow feeding them, they set up such a cheaping that I didn't think we could do a Zoom and have those baby birds there at the same time. So I'm hoping to go back, but in the meantime, I have these amazing nests that I'm watching.
I love that. Well, I'm glad that our meeting isn't disturbing the birds and you've worked out a solution. That's
Well, I think the wildlife around here in Massachusetts has exploded. We have turkeys, a gopher, more chipmunks than any garden could possibly accommodate, some coyotes, as well as all the usual ones. We're very busy in the yard here this year.
Yeah, we've been staying inside, but nature just keeps doing what it does, which is kind of a nice reminder. Cool. So let's go right into the questions. Things, speaking of being inside, being outside, the country is moving towards thinking about opening up again. Lots of talk about that. What are your thoughts about weight management, the way we've been living, and as we transition, doors are opening, what's going to happen? What should we be thinking about?
I think now's the time to lose weight, really, honestly speaking. I mean, it's happening. It's not like we don't have any cases out there, but the country can only stay closed for so long. Everybody's antsy to get back to some form of normal. So I think if you want to lose weight, now's the time, because if you've gained weight during the pandemic, if you intended to lose weight, but you haven't lost as much as you wanted to, there's still time for a vigorous start. I mean, we're not all of us going to go back to normal life straight away. There's going to be a lot of time at home. 10 pounds, we could get those off now before really summer bites. So I think it's great. The other thing about weight loss now is the world has gone crazy, hasn't it? I mean, it's just all over the place. There's so much going on that's hard to process, but we can control what goes into our mouth. We can control how much exercise we do, whether it's, with a YouTube video or something that you do in your garden. So it's a way that we can feel better because it's an area where we really can control what we do and help. I'm just seeing your new cool tool, Lee, here on asking people their opinions. I'm very excited to see the answer.
Yeah, isn't this cool?
Look at this.
Yeah, so for everybody who's been with us before, we're trying something new. So we have a poll going.
Mm-hmm.
Hopefully you can all see it in one of all the apps that you're using, all those apps. So let us know if it's been easier or more difficult. Has being locked in give you more control, or has stress and staying home caused stress eating or other issues? And
I love this, Lee. I mean, this poll is great. I mean, it's the first time we've used it, but it allows me to speak, to how people are feeling. So, if it's been easy, go for it. Keep it going. I understand that because, there's less restaurant food, less eating out, less socializing. We're just at home. We can control what comes in the house. It's great. But, also for people who've gained weight, sure. I mean, there's been a lot of stresses, no question, but the country's going to open. So, now is a time when we would love to help you. And we've got a few weeks here at least, maybe the whole summer before things really start moving to make some great progress. It's interesting. It's almost an even split, right? 54% say it's been easier and 46% say they've gained weight.
Yeah, as a science-based program, we love data. So, even though it's a little unscientific because we didn't, people show up who show up, right? but it's wonderful hearing from you all. And please feel free to comment in the chat. What did influence you easier or more difficult? You know, what were the factors? And we would love to speak to them, I think.
Mhm.
Yeah, this is fun. Oh, and also in the chat, the launch will be 3/22 if it happens. So thank you, Belle, for that. I'm so excited for that. Um, okay, next question is, so on this topic, right, what has been beneficial during the pandemic? Like, what can we focus on that, you know, we've built up maybe some good habits of planning ahead and doing more cooking. Um, Maybe we've stressed eaten more. Like, what are the lessons that people can think about now? Because this is a great inflection point to actually take stock, right? We don't want to just live mindlessly from day to day. It's good to stop and take stock occasionally. This is a great opportunity, I think, for that.
I think that's exactly right. And, you know, I would also say, I think we can learn from good things and also from bad things, you know, so when we have 54% of people saying it's been easier, what have they been doing? Because if you keep doing what you've been doing, that's a terrific thing. And I'm guessing there's a few things like, oh, more cooking at home, less eating out, less, you know, going to friends and overeating even though you didn't want to. So there's been a bunch of things. There's probably been planning. I mean, I can certainly say in my case that I've been shopping less frequently and I've been having to plan more. We have almost no food waste in our house this time around, where we, you know, this time last year, certainly there was always a percentage of fresh food which didn't get eaten at the end of the week. So if it's been working for you, to understand in your own case how that's been helping is great. But also if you've gained weight, I think understanding, you know, what happened. Was it stress eating? Was it the temptations of cooking things that then you couldn't resist, for example? Was it shopping for things and for your kids? You know, was there too much ice cream in the house? So I think understanding what the downfall points were that caused weight gain again is really helpful, because weight loss isn't easy. It isn't automatic in society. And I think the way science has got it wrong in the past is often there's been almost a silo between nutrition on the one hand and behavior change and psychology on the other hand. And, you know, what we're trying to do here is really bring those things together. And to the extent that you can understand yourself, what are your food triggers? What are the behavioral things that drive you? You can take it one step further and individualize it, which can only be really helpful.
Yeah, life as a laboratory. Right?
That's right. Your own personal laboratory.
It's really good to turn the focus on yourself and live intentionally. Yeah. Another question we had in chat is like, we should ask you how much weight, up or down, right? That might take a little bit of typing on my part, but let me see if I can figure it out. So I'm sharing those poll results for everybody. So we ended up, for those of you watching the recording afterwards, I'll just narrate, 54% found it easier, 46% gained weight. So maybe we'll do a weight gain poll. Yeah.
Can I just comment on one of those things? I mean, I really love the idea of marching in place. Terry from somewhere, I think, was that Walpole in Massachusetts, because you know, none of us need any equipment or supplies or expenses to do that. Everybody can do that, and I'm not sure that I have the willpower to do it for an hour a day. That's very impressive. But all of us can do that, and it gets all kinds of muscles, which is terrifically useful. But I totally get the freshman 15 weight gain as well. I mean, certainly when this whole thing started back in March, I was extremely stressed, and with all of us in my house, you know, been through processing the new life that we have now and the new normal that's coming in our own way, in our own time. So I think, you know, these things do affect everybody differently, and we have to be kind to ourselves and, you know, help ourselves along in a way that works for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love also that, was it Terry who was marching in place? You're reading from the iDiet book daily. That's very cool. Oh, so back to our list of questions. So speaking of time moving forward, we just had Memorial Day. July 4th is coming up. For people who want to do a special meal and maybe you're watching your budget or you want to keep things simple and you want to keep things diet friendly, like what are some spring and summer ways to celebrate safely, economically, with less trouble?
Yeah, no, I love that question. I think there's a lot of ways that we can do this without it feeling like a kind of a second class event. The thing that I think science speaks to most loudly on this is variety. It's a really under-recognized thing out there, even among scientists, but the evidence is so clear. All the studies show that people love variety, and depending on where that variety comes from, you overeat or you feel satisfied on enough calories to help you lose weight. I mean, it's a real split. But if we get lots of variety, we love it. If that variety comes from low calorie, healthy foods, I'm thinking fruits, vegetables, lean meats and fish, that is really helpful for weight control, and it feels very festive because, to be honest, most of us are not cooking half a dozen things for every meal. We're just cooking a couple of things. So if you make a party and there's 5 or 6 things, that immediately feels special. So they don't have to be expensive. They don't have to be high in calories. Just having, 5 different things on the table, it makes it special. And so for July 4th, I mean, there's things like, if you haven't already been eating hot dogs, there's some healthy ones out there. They've got no nitrite. They're low in fat. They're high in protein. They're all natural. They're organic. They taste great. You can, get in regular rolls for people who are not looking after their weight. You can maybe do something like a Joseph's wrap and, cut them into squares to have them with hot dogs for those people who are being careful. It tastes really good. There's grilled chicken marinated in, any dressing you have in your fridge today. That's also wonderful on the barbecue. Coleslaw. You can buy a whole cabbage and chop it up. It's a very inexpensive big salad. We have recipes for that, Lee. We could send those around, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then something like wheatberry salad is very cool, especially if you have, teenagers and young adults in the house who for whom things like wheatberries are quite normal food. That's a wonderful salad. And all of those things I've mentioned keep. So you can make more if you want to have large plates, and you can save them in the fridge for the next day or two. So it's not wasted food. No, I think there's lots of things we can do to make it really special. And me personally, I've already bought in some organic, low-fat, high-protein, nitrate-free hot dogs in preparation for July 4th. It's going to be one of the things we have there. We don't have them a lot. And I'm going to enjoy having them because they'll feel special and different.
That's a really good point. That's something that we teach in iDiet is you can have special food that's still iDiet friendly if you just pick specific things from the iDiet universe of foods and reserve those for celebration meals. It doesn't have to be something off the ranch completely, right? You just decide what's your celebration meal.
Totally. And I think it's, if there's a few things I would love to change in America going forwards and in England too, I mean, one of them is this mentality that high calorie foods taste better. I don't see that high calorie foods taste better. If you think about a fresh strawberry, maybe with some Greek yogurt or a small amount of cream or some chocolate dipped strawberries, that's healthy food and it's so delicious. I mean, is a thick cake with icing really better than that? I think many of us, once you've lost a bit of weight, would say, no, the strawberry is really tempting too. So I think, all of us working out, thinking about things that are healthy that we really love, and using them for special occasions is a great thing that we can do going forward. And another pet peeve I have is that for so many special occasions in the past, we have all been to these occasions where the table is groaning, where there are enormous quantities of mashed potatoes and rolls and more pies than an army of 50 people could eat. And maybe this is a good opportunity to reevaluate that too. Can we have delicious celebrations where the amounts of food are more reasonable, that we're not wasting food? There's so many people short of food in America today. We don't need to waste it. And starting with reasonable amounts for parties, I would love that to become our new normal.
Yeah, really good point. That reminds me of one of our lessons that you put in iDiet about behavioral economics. That nobody here is encountering an opportunity to overeat for the first time, right? Like we've all been around the block on this a number of times before, and it's a loop, isn't it? Like you're presented with an opportunity to make a bad choice, and you've also got your good choices, and you go for the quick hit, and then you almost immediately regret it. And people can cycle through that for a lot. We see it all the time. People cycle through that process. And is there anything you would want to say about like how do you navigate that in the moment? Because taking the long view can be so helpful.
Yeah.
There's reward to making a good decision in the present that's almost better than the reward of the quick dopamine hit.
Well, so, it's been one of the great advantages, I think, of the pandemic is, all the coffee shops closed and all the donuts and the muffins and the pastries that we had to walk past to get our coffee were not there. Wouldn't it be great if we just bought a coffee mug and we didn't go back? I mean, it would save so much temptation. But, in terms of the science of how you do that, the temptation comes because we smell the food, we see the food, we think about the food, that the thought and the sight and the smell of that food gets inside our head. So if you don't look at those donuts, if you don't smell those, if you breathe through your mouth, so you can't smell the taste, they're not really real to you because they don't exist in your head. I think we'll have to unfortunately go back to a few of these mind games if we go back to our coffee shops. But in fact, I would love it for people to go to the coffee shop less. I mean, maybe use it as a treat rather than something that's just like a total routine, and then you would even enjoy it more.
That's a really good point too, that like if it's an everyday thing, then it just becomes part of the noise floor of your life. And if it's an occasional treat, you can extract that much more pleasure from it.
A friend of mine, a new friend of mine, I would say, who I've been helping lose weight for a few months, talked about pizza the other week. One of the things he'd been most worried about when he thought about losing weight was missing the good life, missing out on pizza and things like that. And he's lost 25 pounds. He's doing great. And he wants to lose a bit more. And he was talking about going out for pizza. And I said, sure, you said you wanted to go out for pizza. How are you thinking about it these days? And he said, well, maybe once every 3 or 4 months now as a special treat. And so he wasn't giving up pizza, but he was recategorizing pizza rather than it being like a routine, thing that you might have multiple occasions per week without even thinking. It had become a special treat. He was looking forward to it. He was going to enjoy it to the max. I think recategorizing these foods, which are uncontrollable, which are not good for us if we have them 2 or 3 times a week, but are totally fine if we have them as a special thing once every 3 months. If we can do that, that would be such a transformational thing coming out of this pandemic, that we would all be thrilled with the how much easier it would make our weight management.
Yeah, and that speaks to the brain retraining, repetition and creating new neural circuits that we talk about in iDiet, that you don't want to wake up the old cravings with frequency. The less frequency, the better for the things you want to avoid.
Right. We have so many good comments coming through. Um, I think that, I don't know whether to comment on those, Lee, or what, but
Yeah,
there's
go
so
ahead.
much wisdom in the comments. I love it.
Please, whatever jumps out at you. I've got so many windows open right now. Go ahead and read out. Oh, and SpaceX launched. Let's wish them luck up in the sky. Yeah, Dahlia's point about recategorizing foods as using neutral language to speak about this rather than judgy language. I think a lot of people who are working with weight are also working with their self-talk and their relationship with themselves and how they think about these things. How you think about this is so important because you can think about this with joy and you can think about this with self-flagellation. And it is a choice. Like every food you choose is a choice, every thought you let into your head is a choice. You know, we
Right.
we tend to focus maybe more than iDiet is because Dr. Roberts is also a professor of psychiatry, as well as all the other stuff you know her for. There's really a lot of brain work, psychology, psychiatry built into this. We also call it it's a behavioral program as well as a food program. It's very easy to focus only on the food, like what should I eat? What should I shop for? What's on my list? There's a lot of behavioral stuff that we build into this as well that helps you just, without even realizing that you're thinking differently, think differently. And you can also choose to think differently. What would you like to say about that, Dr. Roberts?
Well, totally. I think we have to synchronize the nutrition and the behavior change components and not work on them, not think of them as being really totally, they should be totally integrated, but also to be aware that the behavior change comes from our culture. When you have this kind of just deep-rooted feeling that unhealthy foods taste better, that's a cultural thing. There isn't much basis in reality for that, but it's what we've grown up with. When we think of pizza as being ordinary food that you can have a couple of times a week without it, a normal food, if you like, that's not how people in many other countries see that. It's almost more, if you like, a French attitude that, treat food is an occasional thing and you enjoy it to the max. You have a slice of the richest, most decadent chocolate cake once a month or something like that. It's not something that you have 4 nights a week and you enjoy it more for that. I think that kind of cultural flip, maybe that's possible now. We've been slightly isolated almost from all of our friends and relatives. We've been seeing them on Facebook, but we haven't been having dinners with them. We haven't been eating out. It's a wonderful time to reboot and re-examine some of the counterproductive assumptions that we've had that have held us back.
Yeah, if I think about my grandparents and their parents versus the life that we live today, there is a wall of toothpaste. There's a wall of mustard. There's a wall of ketchup. Like you go out into any retail environment, there's so much choice. And there are a lot of MBAs analyzing that to the nth degree, trying to influence our behavior. And we grow up now in a world where there's so much choice, so much availability. You talk about toxic availability in iDiet. It's so easy to take this stuff for granted and, to only buy fruits when they're in season and eat them mindfully and treat them as special, to, we had a comment flying by in the chat here about um, more mindful eating, slower eating at home, which is a fantastic thing. Like iDiet is a big tent, as you've said, and we welcome all sorts of approaches because we're compatible with basically everything. So like eating slower, counting your bites, putting your fork down between bites, really Meditating over the food is something that you can add right in. Being grateful for the food that you get and not taking all this stuff for granted. Like everything that we eat in America now used to be a celebratory meal for the most part.
Right.
You know,
And
like,
giving yourself permission to relax in the evening. You know, when you're tempted, it's often because you're tired and your willpower has run out. And, you know, maybe a bowl of fiber will solve that. But for other people, maybe giving yourself permission to spend half an hour doing nothing. Somebody mentioned music and a delicious cup of tea. You know, that comes along with sitting and not feeling like you have to keep working or, you know, answer your emails or do all the other things that, you know, we've been rushing around doing. But, you know, giving yourself permission to have a little space.
yeah, so important. You know, food is an available and easy and accessible pleasure, but it's not the only pleasure that you can reach for. You know, sometimes we hear from people who have so many musts in their day that food is their safety valve, you know, and it's good to put some pleasant things on your to-do list as well. And then maybe
Definitely.
you need less of a safety valve.
I'm saying one of my new pleasures is gardening. I know nothing about gardening. All I know I find on the web, but I'm engaged in the production of a lettuce farm and possibly tomatoes in the future. It's been I love it. I go out and I look at my plants every night and water them and talk to them, and uh, it's been a new experience. But yes, you know, to the extent that we can have other things in our life that are enjoyable to take away from the stress of the news and, you know, the employment situation and all the other bad things going on. It's you know, it's important and healthy to have those things to de-stress with.
Yeah, learning how to change your focus without chewing can be, you know, we give you things, we give you free foods, we give you things that you can chew if you need to, that have fewer calories, but also just recognizing that you have an option to do pleasant things that don't involve chewing as well.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. But back to chewing. So we've had questions from people with milestone birthdays in the house, like a 16-year-old birthday during lockdown, or a 21st year birthday, or any, it could be a 50th birthday. What advice do we have for um, making that special in present times?
So you know, I think Americans, you know, Brits as well, have a long history of using food as a substitute for love and attention. It's hard to break that overnight. Grandparents will want to visit. And you know, I'm all in favor of keeping some of these things, if not all of them. So you know, if you've always ordered in a particular cake for your kid on their birthday, you know, probably now's the right time to keep doing that, frankly. But I wonder if you can order a smaller one, for example, because a smaller cake means less overeating, less waste, you know, less cake you have to try and encourage other people to take away with them. So I think portion sizes for these, you know, unhealthy habits that are echoes from the past is a terrific thing to do. Or you can ask your kid, what would they like to do? Maybe the cake is totally unimportant to the kid. Maybe they would actually like a family game of soccer in the backyard. Or maybe they would like a special movie that they've been lobbying to see that you've been resistant about and bored. You know, primarily kids want love and attention. And you know, if we can opportunistically substitute that for unhealthy food, they may not even notice. If you've got that cake in the house, though, I still recommend fiber. I mean, I think having extra fiber for 2 days before events where you're confident you're going to be tempted definitely reduces the temptation, and it makes it easier to just enjoy a small piece without and that small piece ending up to be 3 or 4 large pieces.
Yeah, start out full of healthy things, and then you need
Right.
less of the unhealthy. Yeah. And, you know, you've made this point twice now, which I would love to amplify, which is leftovers that last. You know, like a cake is going to go stale and it's full of sugar and it's crying out to you. But leftovers from the cookout that could last 4 or 5 days, it's less of a, there's less urgency to eat it all at once. And so some of the healthier things will stick around longer, like the coleslaw, like the grilled fish, well, the grilled chicken.
That's right. That's right. It's, that stuff is easy to save in the fridge and it's great.
And freeze it, right? You can always freeze. I love eating out of the freezer because then I'm not stressed about using things up.
Yeah, I wouldn't freeze coleslaw, to be honest. I think I never have frozen coleslaw or wheat berry salad. I know that wheat berries themselves freeze really well. I mean, wheat berries are very easy to cook. You just put them in 4 or 5 times the amount of water. You boil them for 40 minutes until they're starting to break open. They're really easy. And at that stage, you can bulk cook them like that and store down portions for future use. They come out just as good as they went in. So for wheat berry salad, if you love that, that's a really easy way to be able to have that all summer without the extra heat of cooking wheat berries all the time.
Right, the moisture in the house. And just to clarify, I was talking about freezing your proteins, not freezing your salad. There are some people who freeze salad. I don't quite understand that. Um, also a point about wheat berries. There are lots of different varieties of wheat berries, like red, and there are different qualifiers on the label. So everybody should know that all wheat berries are good in our book, right? So don't worry about the specific variety that you find in the store. And Dr. Rob, is it in the baking section? Where do you find your wheat berries in the store?
They're usually in my supermarket. They're usually by the flour and the sugar and things like that. Whole Foods sometimes has them in the bins. So if you go to Whole Foods, they're there. But a regular supermarket is usually in the baking department.
Okay, cool. We should share the final poll results. And while I'm doing this, we were talking about eating at night. That is a huge problem for people. Please put in the chat, because I can't create a poll for this. What is it that you overeat at night? Either tell us what is it that you go for at night, or think about the trigger. We talk a lot about habit loops in iDiet. What is the time or the feeling or the thought or the event that is the beginning of the night eating? It would be really interesting to be able to talk to that, I think. And for those of you who are watching the recording or on Facebook, the poll results are actually kind of good news, because most people didn't gain more than 5 pounds. So it was 69% 5 pounds or less, 23% 10 pounds or less, 8% 15 pounds, and 0% more than 15 pounds. It is my opinion that fresh weight is easier to lose. Like if you're just up a couple pounds, it's much easier to correct. That might be an interesting thing to talk about if you have a thought on that.
Yeah. There's a whole science behind that, because, what we know for a fact, based on, quite a number of studies now, is that the longer you carry excess pounds, for example, the more likely you are to become diabetic. And I think what that says is that there is, progressive metabolic damage of keeping the weight for longer. And that metabolic damage also makes it, messes with your appetite regulation. So I think the sooner you get it off, the better. And this is very encouraging. Nobody's over 15 pounds. Most people are 5. Those are not big amounts. And, they could be largely off by July 4th, or fully off by July 4th for many people, and largely off for other than that. So, that's actually very encouraging.
Yeah, you can lose up to 1% of your body weight per week. That's the healthy rate. So everybody can calculate for themselves what their rate could be if they're really good, right? If you're on a good plan and if you're really good.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great time. Especially when you see that the country's opening, that you can see things opening up. The thing that's not open yet that I long for is hairdressers. I think many women long for hairdressers, but it's coming. So I think you know, it's producing an emotion of, okay, I've got to get ready for this. So I do think that many of us are going to be eager to deal with our weight now for the imagined good times we have coming up as soon as possible.
Yeah, there's a really good question in the chat about how much of fresh weight is water and how much of fresh weight is actual fat.
I think that it depends on if we're talking about overnight weight versus 1 month or something like that. If we're talking about weight gained over 1 to 3 months, something like 75 to 80% of that weight will be fat. If you're talking about a 4 pound or a 5 pound weight gain since 2 days ago, because you know you had some major thing happened, then probably only 50% of that is going to be fat, because there is excess water that's stored when you overeat as a short-term thing.
Very helpful. From the comments that I'm seeing, it looks like carbs are really the go-to in the evening.
Well, you know, that speaks to fiber, and you know, let's remember that All Bran Original is still very available, even if Fiber One is hard to get. Trader Joe's Original High Fiber Cereal, they are really filling, and they feel very much like, you know, a piece of toast, or you know, other kinds of carb foods. So it really does kind of fill the same hole, especially if you put like a teaspoon of raisins in or something like that, so that it's a bit sweeter.
Yeah, so you can still have the sweet sensation with fewer calories.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I'm with Thomas here in the comments about evening being a shift down or a mood change. I mean, I'm sort of extrapolating what you're saying, Thomas, but when I hear carbs, I hear I want a mood boost, you know, because carbs are the dopamine hit. So, you know, we can look at this from all the perspectives, from the food science perspective, and
Right.
also from the psychology perspective. You know, if you you may need a different kind of distraction, you may need more pleasures in your life. How else would you handle like a non-caloric answer to that desire?
Well, I think, you know, food and mood are not independent. So I mean, you're right. When you're talking about eating carbs, you're often talking about trying to feel better, to have some comfort. I would like to suggest cardamom tea. Cardamom tea is one of my favorite mood boosters. It's a really great thing. You can order cardamom seeds on Amazon. You throw a handful of seeds into a large pot of water and you simmer that for maybe half an hour. And then you throw in tea bags, as many tea bags as you like, so that this is quite concentrated tea. And then you can keep it in the fridge for a whole week. You can mix it 2/3 tea to 1/3 milk, and then add any sweetener of your choice. It's a really delicious, you know, sweet mood improver in my opinion. It's low calorie, it's healthy. All you've got is, you know, 1% or fat-free milk, a third volume. So you're getting some carbs, but you're getting a really kind of strong sensory experience as well. Cardamom is a very fragrant substitute for things that you would overeat with 600 calories in it.
Yeah, again, it's an interesting, comforting flavor, and it's anti-inflammatory too. Like, you know, anybody interested in things like that might just want to look up Ayurvedic teas, and that can be another, because cardamom is a big part of Ayurvedic teas and science. There's a question in the chat. You are spelling it right, Thomas.
Yes, yes, that cardamom, that's correct. That's spelled correctly there. I can see that.
So everybody with a question about that. But Dr. Roberts is actually saying you literally buy the cardamom and you boil it. You're not buying it as a tea bag. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you can probably buy cardamom tea. I don't know, but cardamom tea is something I've had in India, and it's just so special there that it reminds me of Indian vacations and all kinds of exotic things. It's a very special thing when you make it yourself from seeds.
Yeah, the smell in the house. I'm going to add that to my ginger tea bag. I think that sounds really nice. So that's the end of the questions. There was something else I wanted to ask you all in the chat. Do you have any other questions for our audience, Dr. Roberts? For our friends?
Questions for the audience. I've been watching. I really love how active this chat has been. You know, I feel like we should go through this. We're running over time again, but we should go through this and take out the questions that we haven't answered and pull them into next time, because, you know, this was full of wisdom and interest.
Yeah, absolutely. There was a concern about GMOs in some of the cereals. I can let you know that Nature's Path Smart Bran is an organic high fiber cereal that's legal, and anything organic is non-GMO. And they don't make a big deal of it, but Trader Joe's has a policy that they do not allow GMOs in their store. So the Trader Joe's high fiber cereal would also be non-GMO, even though it's not marked organic, if that's helpful. Other things that we can deal with quickly here. I should let you know, if you like conversations like this and you're an iDiet graduate, we'd love to have you join us in On Track Plus, where we meet weekly and have a support group and do education and talk about the science as well as the food of weight loss. We're having a really fun time. Right now, we're focusing on bringing more joy into your life, because food is a substitute for joy sometimes. So why not raise everybody's happiness floor and see if that can help as well. And we do have new classes starting in about a week. So please check us out online if you want to engage to recommit or advance. And something else that Dr. Roberts and I were talking about was a reboot, right? We were talking about sort of like a 3 to 5 day reboot program that might be based on our modified fast, because fasting seems to be very popular right now, even though most people fail at it. They're still curious about it. Is there anything you want to say about that generally?
Modified fast. It's so popular in the press. I think that ideally it is done with supervision and hand holding. So that's why Lee and I have been talking about, you know, maybe doing a class, a 5-day class with a great deal of hand holding to give people the chance to experience that if they're interested. It's not for everybody. I think that what I see in the research is that the weight loss is pretty identical between people who go for modified fasting versus people who go for a more conventional program. So I don't think it's a magic bullet, but for anybody who's interested in doing it, you know, maybe it'll work well for you. So, you know, we're a big tent, and we'll be happy to help people try.
Yeah. And I remember you said in the past, if anybody's curious about fasting, start with not eating after dinner. Because
It's such great advice.
because we're fasting. A breakfast is because you're fasting overnight, right? Break fast. Everybody fasts every day when you're asleep. Just push that window, right? Just push that window open. Don't cheat yourself. You know, one of the things that we show in advance, actually, we've got a chart now that we show in advance that because you're eating during the day, you're not losing weight during the day, you're losing weight at night. I graph it out for you. So the later into the evening you push your eating, the more you shrink your available window for weight loss. And so you're really you're cheating yourself of all of the good effort you put in during the day. You know, there was another study that I just saw, speaking to your point about efficacy, right? That the weight loss is about the same, but they did a survey study and found that people who did fasting quit it more frequently and sooner than people who did something like a Mediterranean style eating plan where things aren't quite as restrictive. People stay with that longer. And iDiet is compatible with a Mediterranean eating plan. Like, I think there's a lot of Mediterranean in what you did, yes?
There's a lot of Mediterranean foods in what we serve. Certainly, I think we've got a bigger emphasis on fiber, which I think helps make us more effective than a regular Mediterranean program. But yes, if you can stick with a modified fast for what was that, 4 months or something like that, that study, you will lose a lot of weight. In my opinion, that's too long a time to do by yourself. That should be something which is under medical supervision. I think a short-term modified fast to reboot is fine and quite possibly healthy. In relation to one of the questions, I see what's the supposed advantages. I think what a lot of these studies are showing is that there may be some benefits for the hormone insulin. You become a bit more insulin sensitive if you do modified fasting, and that can potentially help with hunger down the road. In the short term, you're very hungry.
And we're talking about like just a couple of days, right?
Yes, we're not talking about weeks at a time. No.
Right, because then you run into nutrient deficiencies and other issues.
Definitely. And I think a lot of these studies which have done modified fasting, they have not been measuring things like bone mineral density, which, once you've lost it, you've lost it. So, there's a lot to know about these long-term modified fasts before we could, kind of say, yes, they're safe, go ahead, no problems.
Yeah, there's a lot of fads. We're very allergic to fads in iDiet.
It's one of the things I love about my job, and I'm quite proud that I haven't screwed up on yet, which is that, there's government advice, which is, everybody agrees calories are important. Then there's stuff coming along in science. Where do you say, yes, this is ready for prime time, it's safe, it's healthy, it's going to be effective versus not? So I'm the one who makes all the calls on those things, and I haven't yet screwed up. But yes, so modified fasting, I'm saying, sure, for the short term, not ready for, something as a permanent lifestyle choice yet, in my opinion.
Yeah, and just to be clear for everybody listening, when we're talking about that in iDiet land, we're saying 1 day, maybe up to 5 days, but we start people with 1 day, and we're not recommending anything longer than that. And even with the 1 to 3 day sort of thing, not more than a couple times a year. Yes, sort of as a metabolic and a psychological reset. Am I getting that right?
Right, that's absolutely right. And maybe we'll change that in the future, but I feel like that's a safe place to start.
Very good. The other things that you can eat anything you want 4 or 5 days a week, and then you really fast the other days of the week. That also, a lot of people drop out of that too, is finding it very difficult. But what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think it's difficult. I mean, if I think about, could I work effectively on those days when I was fasting? No, I could not. Would I be crabby and irritable with my family? I know the answer to that one too. So no, I think that's a very hard way to do it. Some people may be able to, but they're probably a minority.
Yeah, and you have to acclimate to it, and it's going to vary person to person. And ironically, it's easier, I think, the less weight you have, right? The more weight challenged, the harder it is to deal with fasting.
Right, no question. I think for someone who's already got to their goal weight, the odd day of fasting will be easier, and it may be proved to be quite a good way to kind of keep your weight where you want it. I mean, that's why we put our modified fasting in advance rather than engage at this time.
Yeah, and there's a good helpful comment here about people like Dr. Walter Longo, who are using calorie restriction in extreme circumstances like cancer treatment.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's medically supervised, right? And that is with a specific purpose.
Yeah. No, there's a lot to be learned about it. And, we just need to keep on top of the evidence and make good calls on, what's safe and what's going to be helpful to people.
Okay. Thank you so much. This has been really fun. And thank you everybody who's attended. love your comments. We will share on social media and by email those recipes that Dr. Roberts mentioned so that you'll all get those, watch your email. And it's always a pleasure spending time with all of you. So thanks, everybody. Have a great weekend. Have a healthy week.
Yes, thank you,
And
everybody. It's been great seeing all the comments as well. It's been
yeah,
a very
really,
active chat board.
really nice. And stay in touch on social media. You know, give us comments, ask us questions. We're here to help. All right, thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.